Alvin, what's going on,
to
man?
meet you, man.
Hey, Zach. Hey, Drew. Nice to meet you. All great here.
Love it.
If I
Welcome
remember
to the
right,
show.
you made this work at like 2 or 3 in the morning your time, correct?
What time is it?
Yes, it's 12:42 a.m. I'm drinking lots of sugar right now to keep awake.
Well, hey, we appreciate it. I will say you're one of the rare ones. We don't get a ton of people calling in from this sector of the world. You know, Asia is probably the worst time zone for us to cover, and there is something to be said about being boots on the ground and living in the market that you are building for. So we love covering neobanks. We love covering all things digital dollars. Before we dive into your questions, if anybody's watching right now, if you have a question for Alvin, Bitget Wallet, drop it in chat. We'll ask it to him live. But Alvin, before we dive in, kind of give us the lay of the land. What do you do at Bitget Wallet? And what have you been spending your career recently building?
Cool. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer at BitGet Wallet. It's a fancy title for basically everything non-tech, right? I'm in charge of it. And what we're doing here is we're building an everyday finance app, right, where users can save, send, and spend in digital dollars, or basically any assets that are on the blockchain itself, right? And if you want to access any markets from perps to crypto, you're able to do it as well. We have been fortunate to have been building in this space for the last 8 years, so we're not a new project. We've gathered over 100 million users in these 8 years, and much of the growth, which I'm sure we'll get into it, very soon, is actually coming from emerging markets, right? The likes of South Asia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa. So I think, DeFi and crypto has evolved a lot over the last 2-3 years. And 5 years ago, if you ask me what is the dominant use case for crypto, everyone would say speculative trading. But today it's very, very different. I think it's a lot on payments and everyday finance.
How has your approach kind of evolved? Okay, because we talk with a ton of neobanks. We just had Western Union on. I think when you look at these on the surface, it's an app that you could spend digital dollars. But the way people, I think, are using the apps, the persona of who you're building for is vastly different. Even what you mentioned, trading perps, you see Dogecoin on the website. How has this evolved from, hey, you have your portfolio that you're trading, and when you want an easy off ramp, here's the option, to, like you said, now everyday spend, finance, managing the full stack of your finances?
Yeah. I think there's two parts to it, right? And the first part is really a very natural evolution. So we started 8 years ago and we were the first cross-chain wallet back then, right? And of course, along the way, airdrop hunters, speculative traders, NFT lovers, they came in. And I think in the last 2 years, people have been starting to ask like, all right, I've all this, money on the blockchain, I have stable coins and so on. So how do I start to use it and spend it, especially in the bear market, right? Where you may not want to be trading, you want to use it. And this is when we started building, the global payment network rails. And the ability is then for you to be able to pay using local methods, no matter where you are, right? So for example, in Southeast Asia and in Latin America, QR payments are very, very big, right? So you're able to, for example, go into a grocery store, whether it's in Vietnam or in other Southeast Asian countries, whip out your Bitget wallet, scan the QR code, and essentially use your stablecoins for payments, right, in a split second. So that's what we've been building, basically to allow people who have crypto assets, right, to start using it in other ways other than trading. Now, along the way, especially in the last 1 year, we started to realize that there are new, what we call Web 2.5 users coming in. They've heard about crypto. They've heard their friends telling them that, hey, there is a shortcut to getting USD and that's stablecoins. And why they want it is, again, their local currencies are depreciating and they want a shortcut to get, I want to be able to save in USD, but at the same time, in the same app, be able to spend it as well. And I think this is what we've been building.
Alvin, when you think about the evolution of this, it sounds like originally the company experienced a sense of like initial product market fit and hyper growth around solving this, like you said, around 8 or 9 years ago, this like huge pain around cross-chain connectivity. Help maybe talk a little bit about why that was so painful in the early days, or like what that unlocked. I feel like right now we're almost on the other side of that spectrum where it seems like that problem is so well solved for that it's almost like we've seen in some ways that sort of functionality be expected by a lot of applications and a lot of builders. Talk a little bit about the early days of why that was. I think people really underestimate how much is happening behind the scenes with this stuff cross chain. Can you expose a little bit like why that was so powerful at that time, and also maybe now how you see the cross chain reality of that?
Yeah. Well, anybody who has used a bridge right before would know the pain, right? I have, and my first bridge experience was so bad. Like I clicked bridge and I was like, all right, where's the money? It's gone, right? And you have to wait for, all these RPC confirmations, like half an hour gone and you don't know what's happening. And so at that time, you need to be really sophisticated and very patient. If you were to find the, customer support for a bridge, you basically can't find it, right? You have to go to the Discord channel, pray that someone will respond to you. And this is why, again, wallets have always been the front end, right? The interaction touch point. And if you're able to do a cross-chain swap using the native swap experience, it's very easy and the liquidity is almost immediate, right? In executing that cross-chain swap versus waiting for the bridge to confirm on both chains. This is why it's so important. Now, today, I would say, if the wallet is good enough, to be honest, cross-chain swap is no longer a problem, right? I would even argue to say that gas is no longer a problem as well. It's interesting because today we did a focus group for a user who is like Web 2.5 in a way. So he uses his wallet like once in every 6 months. We got him in and, trying to understand, all right, how's the flow for the new user and so on. There were, of course, some issues that we need to fix, but essentially gas never came up as a problem, right? He deposited the money in, he did all the things without needing to know about cross-chain swaps, or he didn't even need to say, all right, I need to get gas and so on. No such problems. So on one hand, I keep hearing people saying like, hey, we need a wallet that solves all these problems. But on the other hand, actually, many wallets like Bitget Wallet have already solved it. What remains to be solved, of course, is a lot of things to do with payments, because payments can be a pain, to be honest. When you integrate a DeFi protocol, you integrate it globally. There's no problem. Any user around the world use it the same way. But if you want to pay in, say, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Brazil, every country has different local payment methods. And this is the tough part to build. And I think the neobank or the wallet that can build for a global network of payments is the one that's going to win the race.
Who do you see doing that well today? Or like, how do you, because we hear this a lot, like this last mile connectivity to the last mile trade. The
Forex is the biggest.
Yeah, it's FX. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about this on the show. I guess in your perspective, what makes that so difficult to solve for, and how are you either one internally approaching solving this, or perhaps partnering with others in the space who are doing this really well? What does that look like right now?
Yeah, the difficulty here again is, for example, if I integrate, say, Polymarket, right, and any user around the world with internet access, you should be able to access it the same way. But like I said, if you want to pay in a grocery store in Vietnam versus another country like in Africa or in Nigeria, the methods and the rails that they use are different because you're crossing over to the fiat world, right? So for example, card payments may be very big in Western markets, but in Latin America and in Southeast Asia, the daily form of payment is QR codes, right? Then that means your wallet has got to integrate the local QR standards. And the standards for Brazil versus Vietnam may be very different. And some countries don't even have a standardized national QR framework, right? And then you've got to integrate multiple standards within the country. So today, again, if you're in Southeast Asia, you can basically just whip out your phone, scan the QR code at the grocery store, and 99% of the time you're able to pay from stable coins to the grocery store's fiat account in a second. In Africa, though, it's different, right? They don't really use QR payments nor card payments. While they do use card payments as well, but many of the stores, they actually use by bank account transfers. So what they do is they have this bank account number and you're supposed to transfer money to them. And so in Bitget Wallet, again, you can just key in the bank account number of the merchant and your crypto just transfers to fiat in their bank account, right? And all these features need to be integrated into a wallet so that no matter where you're traveling to, you're able to pay with local payment networks.
The user behavior is really fascinating to me on this. Like,
Yeah,
what you've learned from that. Go ahead, Zach.
no, I was going to ask too. Like, I'm thinking about later. We're talking to Rashawn. He's building Oversea Pay, and again, very very explicit. Like they're building for Pakistan users that are either in Pakistan or have moved and have family there. How do you decide which market to build from? Because I feel like there's this dichotomy of in one breath you want to go out, you want to capture the world. On the other breath, you want to build for a very specific persona, and it's like, how do you choose which of these markets do you really focus on, integrate the local payment rails on? Because I feel like it's really easy to cross the chasm of building for everybody, and now all of a sudden, certain features or parts of the app may suffer. Where has that focus been for Bitget Wallet? What geos, which problems are worth even solving because the pain points are so big there for the users, and you actually think you can capture meaningful market share.
So the selection is even easier than you would think. It starts with the core belief, right? Why are we doing all these things? And our core belief is that your access to financial assets and services should not be determined based on where you were born or what income you have, right? Everyone globally should have that freedom of access to these assets. And when we look at where people are restricted from this kind of rights, right, we realize that emerging markets again comes up very high on this level. So essentially, because we've been building this for over the last 2 years, our users have also given us the feedback, right, where essentially this is the market where we need to do this and that and so on. So we have heard a lot from, I think, 4 big regions, right? Latin America, especially Brazil, Argentina, and I think a lot of the peripheral countries are coming up as well. South Asia, so Pakistan is definitely one of it. And today, a lot of our users are able to transfer their crypto, right, into the e-wallets that are dominant in Pakistan or some of the South Asian countries, right? So that gives them a very easy way to, off-ramp and then start to use it for their everyday payments as well, using e-wallets. So again, here, you're not just talking about direct payments, you're also talking about connecting Bitget Wallet to all the different financial infrastructure, whether it's e-wallet, whether it's bank accounts.
That's what I was going to kind of go into next. It kind of looks like Bitget is doing both. You have the application, like first party products, but then also perhaps like the under the hood engine for some of these use cases. Like it looks like here on the site, we're getting like the Bitget Wallet X, where you're really positioning these things for like the engine for trading. Like speak a little bit about maybe the infrastructure side of this and selling this to more of the enterprise builders that could take some of these components and build on top. What does that look like right now?
Yeah. So we started Bitget Wallet X actually quite a while ago, but we just rebranded it into a brand here. Now, how I see it is trading and payments. A lot of people think that they're 2 very different use cases, but to me, trading is both a use case and also an infrastructure for any neobanks, right? Because if you are using a neobank for payments and stuff, at some point you have to make certain swaps, whether it's swapping between stablecoins, whether it's swapping between different regional stablecoins, right? Or basically doing cross chains, because some of the chains have certain payment use cases that they've integrated. So we do think the ability to provide very, very good liquidity on swaps is an infrastructure that's necessary for payments to begin with. This is why we've invested so much in it.
Yeah.
Look at the total swaps. I was looking at this real quick. Total swap volume, at least reported on the site, or the Bitget bridge, 1.95 billion in volume. Wow. Over almost 1 million total orders. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's pretty big because it doesn't just serve Bitget Wallet. In this case, our DEX aggregator has APIs have been serving other aggregators and solvers as well. In fact, we're going to launch a solver recruitment program as well, because many of them are using it. So I think the more we can actually build this, the better the infra for users in Bitget Wallet as well. So we see this as pretty synergistic.
Well, I want to go back. I'm going to switch topics a little bit because we've seen this trend of wallets look more like neobanks look more like wallets and trading experiences. We've met with people, we're integrating yield into these, we're trading RWAs, prediction markets are coming into these. It feels like the list is never ending. You've mentioned a few times doing focus groups and user feedback right now, especially in emerging markets, like what is real? Like what do people actually want? Do they actually want the 8%? Do they want to trade, prediction markets? Do people in, Vietnam want access to trading US stocks? What are you seeing? What seems to kind of be that next era of, okay, we've solved US dollar, you can hold US dollars, you can spend US dollars. Now what?
Yep. So there are two groups of users, right? You have the degens who have been our old users and they still want to trade, right? But the things that they're trading are different today. I think a lot of the liquidity, based on our observation of our data, has actually rotated from, say, meme coins to perps and then to RWAs. I think earlier this year was more on perps, and then in the last few months, because of US stock, craze and so on, has gone to stocks, tokenized stocks. And at some point, it may come back into memes. We're seeing like Robinhood coming up, in terms of volumes and so on. Now, however, that is kind of the older segment of users, right? And they continue to trade.
Yeah.
Now, the new audience is coming in, and they're coming in droves, right? Are the stablecoin users. Now, this is one thing which I think is important to note, which is people may not bank where they trade, but they may trade where they bank, right? And if Bitget Wallet or any wallet becomes that trusted place for them to, do their banking or everyday finance services, whether it's for payments, whether it's for savings, whether it's for earning yield and so on, they will start to use that platform to do some form of investments or trading, whether it's in tokenized stocks or crypto. And so I do think these two are synergistic. The other thing that is important to note is capital is most efficient when it's in the same place. Right. If you have your money in, an earn app versus a trading app versus a savings app, your money is really not being used in the best way possible. If you have all in one pool, it means that, for example, you can collateralize your assets, right, to borrow more money and do more stuff. And this is why I do feel no matter whether you started off as a neobank or a trading app, and, at some point, they're all going to converge into a super app, because that is a gameplay in the end.
That actually, I just had a flashback. I don't know if you remember when Plasma was doing the their ICO, and I think you could long it on Hyperliquid, and I had some Zcash, and it was an absolute pain in the butt to move it from whatever exchange I was on. It was like from exchange to wallet to bridge to Hyperliquid, like just an absolutely horrible experience. So, I mean, those 2 points you just made are definitely going to stick with me. Because there's nothing worse than like wanting to open a trade and you're like, oh, well, my funds are in XYZ wallet, or even worse when they're in a bank account. And now you're like, hopefully the trade is still good in 3 days by the time the funds actually make it there.
Yeah. And I think one interesting insight that we saw from our data recently was a lot of people started trading US stocks when, AI stocks and stuff came up pretty big. But many of them actually onboarded into Bitget Wallet because of our crypto card. So, they came into Bitget Wallet wanting to apply for crypto card. And the other insight that we learned from our focus groups was many of these folks in emerging markets, when they applied for a crypto card, it was their first credit card. It was the first time they had a Visa or MasterCard. And then, they have been using it for a few months. And when the craze came with US stocks, they started buying it. This was many months after, they created their card on Bitget Wallet. So there is a very natural, life cycle here. And like I said, I think people will trade where they bank. It's just a matter of timing, whether it's a trending, whether it's easy for them to actually switch. And this is why, we do give certain guidance in our homepage in the app for people to understand what is out there and what is available.
Yeah. What do you think's behind that kind of psychology? It sounds like you guys are doing a lot of user testing and focus groups. What is behind that conviction of trading where you bank versus the alternative? Like, why do you think that is the case? And maybe what are some examples that point to that being true in your mind?
I mean, one, I'm an average user of different trading platforms in both Web3 and Web2, right? I've used Saxo, I've used interactive brokers and stuff. I don't think I'll ever apply for an interactive brokers card, but I do hold stocks on my bank account, right? If you look at it as well, there are a lot of exchanges that have released crypto cards, right? Now, those have done well only with the VIP users, but many of them have started, either kind of dialing back on their card ambition programs, or they've realized that it's not really useful for them to go for mass adoption because, again, many people just treat trading platforms as a trading platform. Whereas for a bank, because your trust is there, you see it as your finance account. And that is a lot broader. So it's very hard to explain this. I think it's more of a mindset association to do with it. And this is why, we pay a lot of attention in doing focus groups and understanding how our users are using it. I'll give you an example, right? We want to be as close to what we call everyday life spending and finance. Now, the average number of times our users swipe their cards is about 10 to 15 times a month. And the average spend per card transaction is about $10 to $13, right? So,
Wow.
there are various crypto cards out there I've seen before where the average transaction is $700 over dollars. I'm not sure about you guys. I definitely don't spend an average of $700 over dollars on one single, on an average transaction. But I think
It's probably very different than the like the Coinbase One card behavior,
the whales,
at least for me. Yeah.
So when we saw this data, we were, encouraged actually, because it means that we are really, really close to everyday, activities of these users. And in emerging markets, of course, the amount is smaller than, say, in Western markets. But we're encouraged by that. And, when we talk to them, we realize that they do have ambitions in, what do they want? They don't just want a platform for them to spend. What they want is a financial account that can give them the freedom of access. Ultimately, it goes back to the core belief where it shouldn't be determined by where you were born, right? And freedom of access to assets and finance is, if you look at all the different features of finance, from savings to earning yield to spending to borrow, I think eventually a wallet will have to cater to all these different functions of finance. But it starts from building that trust with the wallet.
What are you most, as we close here, what are you most proud of since being at Bitget Wallet that you've built or you've seen come to fruition that has created that level of trust as you look back?
Yeah.
You're doing a lot. You're doing a lot over there.
It is a lot and it's pretty tiring. I envisioned this bear market to be easier, but it's busier than ever. We crossed 100 million users, or wallet addresses, I think 1 to 2 months ago. Pretty happy about that. This is 8 years in the making. And I think what we're really proud of is last month we reported that the number of transactions made for payments has actually crossed the number of trading transactions on a daily basis. More people are using us for everyday finance than for trading, right? And I do think this is both an inflection point for the wallet, but also very representative of where crypto has come and how far we've come as an industry.
And that seems to be very aligned with where you're trying to take things forward with everyday spending and the use case and the growth, the massive total addressable market there, it sounds like.
Yep.
It's awesome. Well, Alvin, let's stay in touch. It's fun to see what you're building and how it all connects together. For us, I think we're diving into a lot of these different categories that Bitget Wallet as a business is tying together, like earning and wallet and card and the infrastructure behind it, and prediction markets is becoming like very interesting. Tokenized equities. There's all these different conversations that you operationally are touching with the business. So excited to continue learning from you. Thank you for coming on, and yeah, let's stay in touch. This was fun.
Thanks for hosting. Anytime.
Thanks, Alvin.
Have a good night. Thanks for making time.